Hi, welcome to Twisted Wave 101. My name's Mike, and this is the equalization video, the 7th in our series. In this video tutorial, we'll talk about equalization, the sculpting or shaping of audio. EQ is the go-to tool for most audio engineers. We use it often, and as you progress in your career and your ears become more attuned to frequencies in your audio, you'll start to reach for an EQ as well to change some of those. Before we get into talking about EQ though, let's talk about the frequency spectrum that we hear, the audible spectrum for human beings, which ranges from 20 hertz or 20 waves or cycles per second up to 20,000 hertz or 20,000 cycles per second, denoted by a capital H, lowercase z for Heinrich Hertz, who studied it. You might also notice 20,000 hertz represented as 20 kHz, where k refers to 1,000, or kilohertz. And sometimes people say 20 to 20K. As we age, we lose detail and responsiveness in the higher end of the spectrum. Most adults, around 40, are limited to about 15,000 hertz, give or take a couple thousand, and how many loud rock concerts you went to when you were a kid. So definitely protect your ears when you go out to loud places. I want to point out the graph on the right-hand side. The vertical axis of the graph on the left-hand side denotes volume. This is a typical frequency graph that you're going to see in all the equalizers that you begin to use. We can go up 12 dB or boost 12 decibels of volume there, and on the bottom we can attenuate or cut 12 dB of volume if we need to. And then on the horizontal lower axis, you see the frequency spectrum. Now, I told you that we can hear from 20 hertz up to 20K or 20,000 hertz, and this graph actually goes from 10 hertz all the way up to 40,000, which is beyond our spectrum, but you'll denote the limit by the dotted vertical lines that you see on both sides. Is the process of adjusting the balance between frequency components in a signal. Equalizers are used in recording studios, radio stations, and production control rooms and live sound reinforcement, live places, to correct the responsiveness of microphones, instrument pickups, loudspeakers, and hall acoustics, and of course voice, because that's what we're dealing with. Equalization may also be used to eliminate unwanted sounds, make certain instruments or voices more prominent, enhance particular aspects of an instrument's tone or voice's tone, or combat feedback, that screeching kind of howl you hear sometimes when you have a mic and a speaker system and play with each other. Equalizers are also used in music production or voice production to adjust the timbre of individual instruments by adjusting their frequency content and to fit individual instruments within an overall frequency spectrum of the mix. So maybe you have a bass guitar and an acoustic guitar and the frequencies are playing in the same space. We might carve out a little bit of the bass in the acoustic guitar and let the bass guitar take over there. That would be shaping the overall mix. The most common equalizers in music production and, of course, voice production are parametric, semi-parametric, graphic, peak, and program. And we will be talking about high and low pass filters, shelving EQ, graphic EQ, and parametric EQ in this video series. So, high and low pass filters. These are the simplest filter circuits in common use within equalizers. And they are a little bit confusing because when we say high pass, we mean that the high frequencies get a pass. And conversely, if we say low pass, the low frequencies get a pass. Sometimes we also call a high pass frequency a low cut, which is the same thing. A high pass filter, sometimes called a low cut, progressively reduces the level of any audio frequencies below a user specified cutoff frequency, while leaving the level of those above this point comparatively unchanged. So if we look at the graph on the right-hand side, you'll notice a blue dot on the left-hand side of the graph with a little HP, if you can see that, denoting a high-pass filter. You'll notice that I've set that to a certain frequency, and we are beginning to roll off or take volume down past that dot. So we have set our low cut or our high-pass filter at some frequency, and we are now cutting off the frequencies below that. Or we are letting the high frequencies pass. Confusing, I know. On the right-hand side, you'll notice the low-pass filter. On the other hand, the low-pass filter, sometimes called a high-cut filter, reduces the level of frequencies above a cutoff point, leaving those below comparatively unchanged. So again, we're doing the same thing to our audio. On the other side, we're taking away the high frequencies past that certain point, denoted by that yellow line as it starts to slope down. So in this case, we are removing low frequencies on the low end, and we are removing high frequencies on the high end, leaving everything inside that big, large yellow bell alone. We use high pass filters a lot in audio to get rid of frequencies that happen to be picked up by the microphone that don't need to be in the recording, specifically because your voice usually sits above those. Then we come to Shelving EQ. Shelving EQ is a filter that is designed to apply an equal gain change to every frequency beyond the selected frequency. So if we look at the graph on the right, you'll see the filter number 1 is indicated somewhere around 200 hertz. We have boosted 6 decibels all the way out from that frequency on. And if we talk about a high shelf, you can look over to the filter number 4, and I have chosen a frequency of, we'll just say 5,000, 5K, and we are now boosting about 6 decibels from that frequency all the way out to the right. So a shelving frequency is often what you're going to see in consumer stereo systems. So when you go to reach for a bass or a treble knob in your car or your home audio system or even your iPod or your iPhone, you're often using a shelving EQ to push up all of the bass beyond that frequency or all of the treble, or to take those down. So this is pretty common. A graphic EQ is a collection of usually between 10 and 31, I put 30 here, but 31 is in the graph, individual filters whose fixed frequencies are spaced evenly throughout the entire frequency range, but usually at octave derivatives. So maybe 1 filter per octave, or a half octave, or a third octave. The 31 band in front of you is a third octave. Some graphic equalizers use only peaking filters, and these are peaking filters, though others have filters at the extremes of the range, the high and low, that turn into shelving filters. So this equalizer is something that you might have seen in maybe the 80s or 90s on a hi-fi system, where you get a fixed number of frequencies and you can just boost or cut those frequencies. And you can see those frequencies at the top of the graph. So we start at 20 hertz and then we go to 25 and then 31.5 and 40 and 50 and on and on and on. And we go all the way up to 20 kilohertz at the top. So these are chosen frequencies for a reason. And then we can boost or cut those by, in this graph, 20 decibels, which is kind of nice. The last type of EQ is a parametric EQ. A parametric equalizer controls more parameters of the sound than a graphic equalizer. A parametric equalizer can control these aspects of each frequency, 3 aspects of each frequency, sorry about that. We can change the gain, which is the boost or cut of volume. We can change the frequency, and we can change how wide around that frequency we're cutting or boosting, and that is the Q. Like the graphic equalizer, each frequency can be increased or decreased. However, a parametric equalizer can also control the Q, again, that width of the bell that you see, and can vary the bandwidth or range by control by making its effect wider or more narrow depending on needs of personal tastes. A parametric EQ is often used to sculpt sound in a more controlled way and is often used to sometimes surgically remove sounds without affecting others. So if we take a look at the graph on the right-hand side, we have 4 filters. 4 types of EQ there. All of them are in a parametric EQ. If we look at the first one, we've chosen the frequency of about 60 hertz, and we are notching that frequency out pretty tightly. We don't want to affect a lot of the frequencies around it. We just want to take that frequency out. It turns out that 60 hertz is the cycle of power in the United States and sometimes shows up as hum, in a recording. And in this case, we'd like to take that out. When we move to filter number 2, you can see that we have a really wide bell, or a wide Q, as they would say. So we're sort of just pushing up some frequencies around the 300 or 400 mark, a couple dB, like a dB and a half. When we go to filter number 3, we're going up about a full 3 decibels, and you can see that the bell is a little wider, and we are boosting a little more. And then we get to filter number 4, and we're notching out not as steep as number 1, but we are notching out somewhere around, 7,000 or so, which turns out to be a frequency that plays a lot in S's or sibilants sounds. So this denotes that we've added some volume and boosted some frequencies in the 3 and the 3,000 range, and we're cutting in the 60 hertz and about the 7,000 hertz here. Parametric EQ is usually what an engineer reaches for when they're sculpting audio. Apple has included a couple of EQs for you to use. So when you install Twisted Wave, if you go into the VST or audio unit area of your effects option menu, you'll see that there are a bunch of plugins that are included. And if you watch the plugin video, the last one, the 6th video in this series, you will have gone through some of those plugins. They give you a high pass, a low pass, and also a band pass filter set. They also give you a graphic EQ, which we looked at a little bit ago in the video, and they also give you a parametric EQ. The plugins we're going to download in this video series are a Marvel GEQ or Graphic EQ in 16 bands with linear phase, which is a fancy way of saying that when the bands cross over from one to the next, they try really, really hard to not induce resonance between those bands. Every EQ known to man, whether it's hardware or even in software, induces resonance or sort of ringing right around the band that you choose. And sometimes that's a musical thing, sometimes it's not so musical. Linear phase attempts, in computers at least, to push that into a range that you can't hear. We're going to go to Voxengo and we're going to download the Marvel EQ there. We're also going to download TDR Nova from Tokyo Dawn. This is now one of my go-to EQs. I love this one. It's a parallel dynamic 6-band EQ, which is a lot to say, meaning that it's both an EQ and a multi-band compressor. The compressor is beyond this video tutorial. We'll get into that one, I think, next in the next series. So we're just going to use the EQ section of this plugin, but this plugin gives you 6 bands to use and also a compressor as well. And that's at tokyodon.net. So we're going to go download those. Before we do that, though, I do want to bring up QuizTones, which is a really great app that you can download for your Mac, your iPad, or your iPhone. And I think it's down $10 from the App Store. And this is a quiz series that will test you on different frequencies that you might hear. So when audio engineers go to school, we usually have to go through a period of classes where we have to pick out and adjust, or at least pinpoint, frequencies that we hear. So often we're given white noise or pink noise, which is broadband noise, or even music, and some frequencies have been boosted or cut in those audio samples, and we have to find those audio frequencies and figure out which ones they are. So it's a way to test your ears and to see if you can hear boost or cut in music or in white or pink noise. So this is about $10, I think, and you can do it with your headphones on your devices, which is kind of nice. So if you're looking to boost your ability to find frequencies and adjust them quickly, this is a great app for practicing that. So with that being said, let's head to the browser and let's go download our plugins first. We'll do that together. The first one we're going to do is the Graphic EQ from Voxengo or Voxengo. I don't know what it is. So I'm going to click on the link up top here. I gave you the link before, but I'm going to take you there anyways. This is a plugin manufacturer that makes lots of plugins. We are looking at the free VST and AU plugins up here. So I'm going to click that link. Just wanted to let you know that your Twisted Wave will work with both VST and AU plugin formats. If you watch the plugin video, which is the last one, you know that AU is the natural language for Apple for their plugins, and VST works on both Mac and PC. So here are a whole list of free plugins that you can download if you'd like to add those to Twisted Wave. The one that we're concerned with today, just so we can see how it works, is the Mastering Graphic Equalizer, or MGE, or they're calling it Marvel GEQ is what they're calling it. We are looking for the audio unit for Mac. So I'm going to download that and I'm going to save that. And while I'm waiting for that to come down, I'm going to go to Tokyo. Whoops. I'm going to go to tokyodon.net, and this is a music label and also a bunch of artists that create music, really nice music actually. So if you like it and you want to support them, you can do that here. They also make audio plugins, which I really like. They make a compressor here and they make a nice EQ here. And up top, their new one, the TDR Nova, is this parallel compressor EQ that we're going to download and use. So I'm going to download this with the free download button, which takes us to the main page, and we will go to the Mac package and click that. This comes in VST. This is the AU logo here, and AAX is for Pro Tools. So if you have Pro Tools, you can actually use this in Pro Tools as well. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to accept and download. I'm going to hit save. I'm not going to subscribe to product updates, so I'm going to go up to the X here and kill that. I'm going to check my downloads, make sure both of these are down. Yes, I will close my browser. I will go into my downloads and I will click on the Voxengo Marvel EQ and I pop up with a window here. Okay. The Marvel GEQ.component is the plugin file that we need to add to Twisted Wave, or actually we need to add to our computer, and then Twisted Wave will know it's there. You cannot double click this file because it's not a program. It's kind of like a font or a language pack that you add to a program. You're just adding functionality. What we do need to do is copy this into our components folder, which is inside of our computer. So I'm going to take this, and if you have Pro Tools not installed on your computer, this will show up as like a Lego block. Usually it's maybe not the same logo, but it's the same thing, marvelgeq.component. So I'm going to drag this into my components folder, and it will ask you to authenticate. And I'm going to authenticate with my password, which is on the other screen. And I'm going to close the window. Then I'm going to go to TDR Nova. And I'm going to drag the TDR Nova.component into the AU folder for audio units. And I will hit authenticate. And again, it's on the other screen for me. So I'm putting in my password here for my Mac. And I'm good to go. If you have Pro Tools, you can install the AAX plugin too, which is kind of nice. And of course, these come with the manual, so you can read that stuff if you need to. So I'm going to close this, and let's go ahead and open Twisted Wave. I'm going to open Twisted Wave. If Twisted Wave was already open for you and not fully quit, you need to fully quit Twisted Wave and then reopen it if you're going to do this series, because the plugins won't register until you fully quit. So if you're having a problem not finding them, that's usually the case. So with Twisted Wave open, I'm going to go up to File, and I'm actually going to open a document so we can listen to that. I will open up a file called Makers46, and please forgive me, I recorded this and it is not the best recording, but we'll use it for demonstration purposes. So let's take a little listen to this. Meticulously handcrafted. Okay. So what we're going to do is play a little bit with the Apple processor so you can just see those. I'm going to go ahead and highlight this section here. I have loop on, so it will keep playing over and over. Let's go up to Effects, and I'm going to go to Audio Units and VST, which is where all of our plugins are, and I will go to Apple. The first one they give us is the High Pass filter. I will go ahead and click that. I'll hit play, and we can see what this filter does. To unlock big, complex flavors, Makers46 is to unlock big, complex flavors. Okay, what this is saying is that at this frequency dot here, 76 hertz, please start taking down the volume past this all the way down to -20. So as I choose a frequency, I also get a resonance, and I get how much we're taking down. So this is a pretty simple high pass. I could also do the same thing with the low pass. So I can go into Apple, and I can go to low pass. To unlock big, complex flavors, Makers46. Complex flavors. Makers46 is to unlock big, Okay, so that's a low pass filter. I'm going to go to Effects, Audio Units, Apple. We're going to go to the Graphic EQ. Here's a 31 band graphic EQ. I'm going to hit play. Big, complex flavors. Makers46 is to unlock big, complex flavors. Makers46. Okay. Also comes in a 10 band as well. So if you wanted less bands, not as much granularity, you could do that as well. So those are great. Let's go ahead and go into Audio Units and Apple, and let's take a look at their Parametric EQ, which is the one that we talked about. Here we have our Parametric EQ. We have our frequency, and I'll click on this and see if it says 74 hertz. Gain looks like we're boosting about 4.87 dB, and our Q is 1. Let's go ahead and take that Q, and let's move our Q to 10, just to show you what this bell shape around here does. You can see it got a lot tighter. Okay, so a parametric equalizer allows us to change the shape of the bell itself, and allows us to move it around. So we can increase gain, we can decrease gain, and we can choose the frequency. Big, complex flavors. Makers46 is to unlock big, complex flavors. Okay, so it's a parametric EQ. Let's go ahead and take a look at the EQ we installed. Audio Units, and that was Voxengo and Marvel GEQ. Here we are. I'm gonna go to a preset, and we will do a couple of the presets. We'll just see if there's a reset here somewhere. Settings. Yeah, somewhere there's a reset here. There it is. Okay, so here's a flat frequency response. We have here a bunch of bands that have been chosen for us up here. You can see that the frequencies are fixed. Can't change those. This is 317, and I can boost or I can cut. So let's hit play. Big, complex flavors. Makers46 is to unlock big, complex flavors. Makers46 is to unlock big. Hope you're hearing some of the difference there and some of the audio changing as I'm moving this stuff. Let's choose a preset here and just see what they have. Let's do a brighter and bass here. There we go. Okay. This shape here with a bass boost in the low end, not much in the mid, and then a increasing boost at the high end is actually the same shape that you get when you use a loudness button on some audio gear. So maybe you've seen a loudness button on a hi-fi system or in your car. This is what's happening. It's boosting the bass and boosting the treble, making it sound a little more pleasing. Let's hit play. Big, complex flavors. It's a little bright. There's a brittleness in the top end for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take down about 7.9, and I'm going to take this stuff down just a bit too. Big, complex flavors. It's a little bit better. We got a lot of bass happening down here, if you can hear that, if you're in headphones there. I'm going to take 20 hertz down. Big, complex flavor. And I'm getting a little bit of 30 too. We'll pull that down. Big, complex flavor. It's okay. Cool. So that's our graphic EQ. Okay, so let's take a look at the TDR Nova plugin that we downloaded from Tokyo Dawn. So let's go to Effects, Audio Units, and VST, run down the list to Tokyo Dawn Labs and TDR Nova. We'll pull that up. And we've seen this graph here in the previous slides that we were in this video. It's a 6-band, like I said, parametric EQ. So we have a high pass, a low pass, and then we have 4 selectable bands here. Again, we can choose a frequency and we can start to affect it. Let's start off though with the high pass frequency. So we'll come down here to the bottom. This is something I use a lot and actually is really good to use in a lot of your recordings. The way we use a high pass frequency is we start with a frequency and dial it up until we can hear a change in our audio, and then we pull it back down just a little bit so that we're not affecting our voice, but we are reducing the volume of everything below the cutoff frequency, which says here 58 hertz. The other part of a high pass or a low pass frequency is the slope, or how steep this line actually is. In music, we often use a 6 dB per octave slope, and we will sometimes also use a 12. We almost never go higher than 12 because it gets a little too steep, and this plugin even offers a 72 dB per octave, which is pretty crazy. You end up with resonances around the cutoff filter frequency, which don't usually sound so pleasing. So let's stick with the 12 dB per octave, and let's pull it down. I'm going to play some audio here in Twisted Wave, and we will pull it up until we hear a change, and then we will dial it back down just below that. Unlock big, complex flavors. Makers 40. Unlock big, complex flavors. Makers 40. Unlock big, complex flavors. Makers 40. Unlock big. Okay, that sounds pretty good. One way to check that is actually to bypass the plugin in and out to listen to the frequency change from the filter that you've put in. And if you don't hear anything, you know you've chosen well. So I'm going to hit play and I'm going to bypass this in and out. Unlock big, complex flavors. Makers 40. Unlock big, complex flavors. Makers. Good. That sounds pretty good to me. So I'm going to highlight all the audio and I'm going to hit apply and close. Now before I do that, or I should have before I did that, was show you a plosive that I have in the audio. There is a P in complex. Right here you can kind of see this big squiggly line here. This represents a pretty large bass hit. I'm not using a pop filter, which I should be using with this microphone, which is good because I wanted to show you how to reduce plosives in your audio. So let's listen to this section without the TDR Nova plugin applied. Complex, 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 complex. And if you have headphones or bigger speakers, you'll probably hear that P. So if I go up to Effects and I go to Audio Units, we go back to the Tokyo Dawn TDR Nova plugin. The EQ's already been left alone from when I was at 67 hertz. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to highlight this section just to show you what happens here. Apply and close, and you'll notice that P is really flipped, and we'll play it again. Complex, complex. So there's still a little bit of a bass hit, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was before. So I'm actually going to dial this up to 75 hertz. A little bit higher than I would have, because that is a pretty decent frequency for most microphones. If you've spent a little money on the microphone that you bought, you might have a high pass frequency filter on the microphone, which actually usually shows a diagram that looks like this: a straight line and then a diagonal line. And when you engage that, it will be filtering on the microphone itself before it even gets into the computer. So let me go ahead and apply that. Let me just show you what this looks like. I'm going to highlight all the audio, but we'll just keep a look at this plosive section here. Apply and close, and it gets reduced. Let's go back to that area, and here it is right here. complex flavors. Makers 46 is a different. Now, one of the benefits of using a high-pass filter is, again, that we reduce the frequencies below the cutoff point, and it turns out, if I vertically zoom up here, there's usually some hum or picked up noise from the room itself with the microphone, and by using the high-pass filter, we're actually able to take that out. So we've cleaned up the room tone area here. So that's a lot less than it was, so I'll undo that, and let's go back. Go back to the section here. It's pretty good. You can hear some bass in there. So I'm going to hit Shift-Command-Z to redo that. And inventively lifted. And that bass is all gone now, which is great. Cool. My audio in this spot is also what we would say is a little brittle. It's got a little bit of extra high end to it. If we listen to some of the words here. Makers 46. You can see a lot of my S's are really poking out there with that sibilant sound. So I'm going to go up to Effects, and I'm going to go to Audio Units and Tokyo Dawn and TDR Nova. I'm going to take out the high pass. The high pass frequency, if you hit it again, is not cumulative. If you do it once, you've done it. If you try to pull out 75 hertz again, it's already gone. So you can use it over and over again without any destruction to the audio. But I am going to take it out. I'm going to put in the low pass frequency, and I'm going to dial it up pretty high, about 15 or so K. And then I'm going to hit play and pull this down until I hear a change. Makers 46, the bold. 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 Makers 46, the... There, I'm pretty happy with that. I am pulling a little bit of the high end out, but that's what I want. I don't want a lot of that sibilant there. So I'm going to highlight all the audio here, hit apply and close, and we can listen to the take. Meticulously handcrafted and inventively finished to unlock big, complex flavors. That's a nice S there. Flavors. Cool. Okay, so that's what you can do with those filters. Let's go ahead and drop this recording, and we will pick up a recording called Tucson Bad EQ. This is a warped file sonically so that you can hear sometimes what I actually hear in others' recordings, which is a sort of duller, bassier type take. Let's listen to a little bit of it. We came, we questioned, we created the best SUV. Feels a little bit like maybe someone's hand is over their mouth or there's excess of cloth between them and the microphone. This is kind of common, but with EQ, we can actually keep the file, not re-record it, but sweeten it a little bit with some high frequencies and some low frequency reduction. Okay, so let's listen to a little bit more of this take just to get a feel for the color of the audio. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson with the hands-free. So clearly we're missing some high frequencies, but listen for the bass. It's a little bit overwhelming. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. Okay, so let's go up to our TDR Nova plugin, Tokyo Dawn, and let's go ahead and take off the low pass and the high pass frequency. And let's dial in two of our bands. We'll dial in the first one first here. Band 1, we'll turn it on. You'll notice that the dot on the volume graph opens up. And this allows us to dial in frequencies. Remember that when we talked about a parametric EQ, we were talking about three different things that we can control: the Q, the frequency, and the gain. So if I choose a frequency with this dial, I can choose somewhere along the line here. With gain, I can increase or decrease. And with Q, I can widen or sharpen. Now, the first band and the fourth band also have additional filters, and that would be the high shelf for both sides, or fully parametric, which would be the bell. So I'm going to choose the bell. So now you'll notice as I increase gain, the bell goes up. As I change the frequency, the bell moves. And as I change Q, the bell tightens or widens. So a widened bell is often a softer EQ, and as we tighten stuff up, we can surgically go in and sort of pull out frequencies. Now, if you hold down the control and use the mouse wheel on your mouse, you can actually shape this as well with your mouse. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to flip back to our shelf for this. And remember that there was an excess of bass in our recording, so I'm going to take some of that out. And I'm going to dial that in while you're listening to this. So let's highlight some audio here. We'll hit play. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. Now, one interesting side effect of cutting all this bass all the way up to about 500 hertz is that the take becomes actually easier to listen to and more manageable. And I haven't done any boosting in the high end, but we did have a muted high end set of frequencies. It was pretty dull. So we can actually just cut some frequencies and get back what we wanted from the original recording. I'm not going to go this drastic. This is 12 dB down at 500. I'm going to actually pull out a little bit less, but I am going to turn on the high frequencies, and I will zero this out really quick. I will turn this into a shelf, not a bell, but a shelf, and I will start to dial up as well.
We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson. We created the best SUV yet. The all-new.
Okay, I'm happy with that take. It sounds nice, but in one of the plosives in this recording, I can still hear a little bit of a P, so I'm going to engage my high pass frequency, and I'm going to turn the frequency way down because that's pretty high. I'm going to put it at about 70 hertz with a 12 dB and listen to it.
We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned to...
Okay, so the plosive is gone, but we're a little thin now because we're taking out too much bass. So I'm going to dial up.
We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson.
That's pretty good for what we can do with the time we have. So I'm going to apply this shape to my audio. Watch the squiggly line here. Let me just zoom in there. Watch this squiggly line get reduced as I apply this filter. Almost to a flat line now. So that was bass that got taken out because of that filter. So again, we're fixing our recording and making it sound better.
We created the best SUV yet. The all-new, completely redesigned Tucson.
Cool. Okay, so let's go to another take. Thanks to Justin Murphy for letting me use his audio here. This is his voice.
Connected to your life, controlled by your voice, hands-free and always on.
Okay, so he has a nice voice, but it feels banded. It feels like there's a lot of mid-range. There's some nice high-end frequencies in it, but we're lacking some of the oomph at the bottom, some of the bass. Let's listen again.
Hands-free and always on to read the news, play music, check the weather.
Cool. So we're going to add a little bit of bass to this to bring out the low end a little bit. So let's highlight it. Let's go up to Effects, and let's go to TDR Nova. And let's reset all of these. I'm going to turn the highs off. I will turn off the high pass frequency, and I will hold down the Option key and click on these to reset them to 0. Leave this as a shelf, and maybe just dial up a little bit alone. Let me do that while you're listening, though.
Connected to your life, controlled by your voice, hands-free and always on to read the news, play music, check the weather, or even answer that nagging question you woke up with. Introducing Amazon Echo. Just ask. Connected to your life, controlled by your voice, hands-free and always on to read the news, play music, check the weather.
There we go. So I flipped from a shelf to a bell. I didn't want to add excess of bass down in the 20 to 30 and 40 hertz. So by this, we're just adding a little bit more somewhere in the actually exact frequency of 97. 100 to 120 is where a lot of bass resides. So I'm going to apply this to the recording.
Free and always on to read the news, play music, check the weather, or even answer that nagging question you woke up with.
Great. So there's some different use cases with the TDR Nova and with the graphic EQ. You can use either. Parametric is obviously a little bit more flexible than the graphic EQ, so you can really get in there and dial it in. And again, overall, this entire thing is about surgically changing your audio or morphing it so that it sounds more pleasing, correcting issues that you might have with recordings that you have, or actually bringing two things into sonic conformance. So maybe one take is a little brighter and the other take is a little warmer. You might want to balance those two things out. You can do that with EQ. And as you listen more and spend more time with audio, you'll start to know exactly where to go to pick frequencies to change your audio. So thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.